talking about what in this chapter? Why is that important? Why is it important to talk about faith? Okay, yes, folks, everything about our Christianity is based upon our faith, is it not? And when we begin to lose faith, what happens to us? Yeah, we drift, don't we? Take heed, brethren, okay? Lest any man fail of the grace of God, you've got to be careful. You can drift away, can you not? Why is he putting forth all these examples of faith? Why is he doing that? Okay, they were heroes of the Jews, and if they can do it, so can I, right? That's what an example's all is for, right? He did it. This is how you do it. So when I face these circumstances, I can do it too. If they can be faithful, I can be faithful. And now he's in a section where he's talking about Moses. Okay, and so that's where we are. We talked about faith rescued Moses. Okay, faith rescued Moses. Secondly, we talked about faith refused Egypt. Okay, he refused to be called the son of Pharaoh's daughter, choosing rather to suffer affliction with the people of God. His mother trained him to know who he is. You are a Jew. You are not an Egyptian. You are a child of God. And therefore, when it came time to make that decision, he made the right one, didn't he? Even though it cost him a lot of things as far as the earth is concerned. And he did that by faith. Now notice this next section. Faith returned to deliver. Notice what the text says. This is Hebrews 11:27. By faith he forsook Egypt, not fearing the wrath of the king, for he endured as seeing him who is invisible. There's 5 points that we want to make from that one verse, folks. Notice first of all the confidence. He did it how? By faith. Everything you do when you follow God should be done how? By faith. And if it is not of faith, then it is of sin. Whatsoever is not of faith is sin, the Bible says. So we do everything by faith. We walk by faith, not by sight. We trust in the Lord with all our heart and lean not unto our understanding. Folks, everything is based upon our faith in God. The second section, the cut. He forsook Egypt. Now, how many times did Moses forsake Egypt? Nobody knows about Moses in Egypt? Do we have to go back? We're going to be in Hebrews a long time, okay? Just read my notes, okay? Yeah, 2 times he forsook Egypt, okay? He became of age and he went out and he saw 2 of his Hebrew brethren fighting, right? And he tries to separate them, and an Egyptian gets involved. He slays the Egyptian, and what happens then? He forsakes Egypt and he flees to Midian, right? Then God calls him to come back and stand before Pharaoh and to forsake Egypt again, right? This time to leave Egypt with all of Israel in tow, right? Now the question is, which one of these 2 instances is being spoken of in this particular verse? Notice the text says, by faith he forsook Egypt. When you study the commentators, guess what? They don't agree. They're divided. Okay? Some think that it was the first time. Some think that it was the second time. Notice the first one there. Okay? Here's what Brother Waycaster says. There are at least 3 reasons why the writer speaks of the early departure of Moses when he fled to Midian. Okay, so Brother Waycaster thinks that it's the first time that he forsook Egypt. Okay, but you can continue to read. Listen to what Barnes says. The apostle speaks here of the departure of Moses with the Israelites, not of his flight to Midian. Ugh, don't you hate that? Okay, when the commentators don't agree. So that means I have to do what? I've got to study, and I've got to reason, and I can't just bank on the commentators, and I've got to come up with my own reason why I think what I think. I think, you can underline think, is the second time. Okay, I think it was the second time that he's referring to. And there's one main reason why I think that, and the main reason is found in Exodus 2, 14b and 15. Exodus 2, 14b and 15. Listen to what the text says. This was after he had slain that Egyptian. And Moses feared, and said, surely this thing is known. Now when Pharaoh heard this thing, he sought to slay Moses. But Moses fled from the face of Pharaoh and dwelt in the land of Midian and sat down by a well. A couple of things. Does that sound like a man who is operating by faith? Does not to me. The text says very plainly that he feared, doesn't it? We'll come back to that in just a second. He feared. And when Moses fled to Midian, did he have any intention of going back? No. He had no intention of going back. Does that sound like a man of great faith? No. He's scared to death. He's scared he's going to get killed. So he runs away, never, ever, ever expecting to go back to that land. Now, in my mind, this just can't be the time that he's talking about right now. Okay? Because the text says, by faith he forsook Egypt, watch this, not fearing the wrath of the king. Okay? So the first time, he feared the wrath of the king, did he not? The second time, he could have cared less what the king thought. Okay? So I just think that it is the second time and not the first. All right? You can read some more in your notes there about that point B. It's an argument given by Lightfoot, and I think it's a pretty weak argument, but you can read that on your own. Notice the courage, not fearing the what? The wrath of the king. When Moses was first called, did he make some excuses up as to why he didn't really want to go? Yeah. Yes, he knew a few things, right? First of all, I've been gone for several years. How long had he been gone? Anybody know? 40 years. 40 years. He was 80 years old when he stood before Pharaoh. Okay? So he'd been gone for a long period of time. He knew too that this is going to be a monster of a task, did he not? He knew too there was going to be some mighty opposition when he goes to make this particular request. And so, he's kind of humble too, isn't he? Why me, right? I mean, I've already been there. I've already tried that. And guess what? It didn't work. So why me? So he gives all these excuses, but finally, God conquers all the excuses and he goes. Now guys, when he goes, guess what? He goes by faith. There is absolutely not one smidgen, well that's a good word, isn't it? Not one smidgen of doubt, compromise, fear at all when he stands before Pharaoh. Not a bit. Okay? I just find that's interesting. Notice point C there. When he returned with great faith. He kept going back to Pharaoh after every plague with God's demand. He would not compromise with Pharaoh at all. After Pharaoh was defeated, surely his faith was even greater than before, wasn't it? Surely it was. Did Pharaoh try to compromise with him? Yeah. Yes, you can go, but don't go very far. Yes, you can go, but leave your flocks and herds here. Yes, you can go, but, and guess what? Pharaoh never compromised. He stood toe-to-toe with that king of Egypt, the world power at the time, and told him exactly what God demanded and exactly what he expected. How many times? 10 times, folks. 10 times he stood before that man. Okay? Was Pharaoh pleased with Moses? No. Was Pharaoh in a position that he could have done anything to Moses, even take his life if he wanted to? Absolutely. And yet what does he do? He just keeps going back. Let my people go. Let my people go. A lot of courage. By faith, he forsook Egypt, not fearing the wrath of the king. Notice point number 4, the constancy. For he endured. Man, endured. That little word endured is defined as to be strong, steadfast, patient. Thayer says to be steadfast. It involves the idea of being able to hold on in the face of all obstacles, opposition, and grave danger. He endured. Sometimes I've asked myself this question. I wonder how long it took from the first time he went in to talk to Pharaoh until the last time he went in and talked to Pharaoh. Have you ever wondered that? You know, in our Bibles, it just goes like this. Okay? It's just boom, 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 boom. But sometimes the plague would last an entire day, and the effects of the plague may last another day or two before things finish. It could have been a month, it could have been 2 months, it could have been 6 months. I don't know exactly how long that this particular, challenge was in the life of Moses. But folks, he just had to endure through it, did he not? He had to endure, and he did. The release of Israel was not immediate, and he suffered the stubbornness of the king, and even had to endure what? The wrath of the people, did he not? When Moses first went in and asked for the people to be released, what did Pharaoh do? Huh? Yeah, he cut back the straw at first, right? Made their work harder. And then what did he do? Just drop the straw, period, right? No straw at all, but I want the same tell of bricks. Wow. People start screaming, right? What are you trying to do to us, Moses? Right? I thought you said you came here to deliver us, and all you've done is made our bondage even harder. And now they're against him. Guess what his faith is having to do? His faith is having to endure. Okay? It's not an easy thing being a leader of the people of God. Notice, watch this. How did he endure? Many people quit even when what? Small things happen. I'm always reminded of that verse in Jeremiah that says this, if thou hast run with the footmen, and they have wearied thee, how canst thou contend with the horses? Love that verse. Okay? Guys, if the mosquitoes bother you, right? What are you going to do when the vultures start hanging around? Right? I mean, you got to be able to endure, and Moses did. Now, the question is, how did he do it? Well, guess what? We're told how he did it. The cause. As seeing him who is what? Invisible. Folks, there's the basis of faith. Faith looks not at the things which are seen, but at the things what? Which are not seen. Okay? Had Moses had an experience with a burning bush? Yeah. What was so unique about that experience? Ah, yes, it didn't burn up, did it? Can you imagine just walking along, you look up on a hill, and there's a bush, and it's just burning like crazy. But it never what? It never burns up. Let me go take a look at that. And as you draw near, all of a sudden, the bush starts to speak to you. And what did it say? Yes, because the place whereupon thou standest is holy ground. Who will I say is sending thee to them? What did he say? Tell them I am that I am, the self-existent one. The creator of all things, the one who has been here before all things, is the one who is sending you. Did Moses ever see God at that time? No. But guess what? He knew God existed, didn't he? And he saw the what? The invisible. Isn't that something? You can see the invisible. And that's what he did. Wow. Just powerful stuff right there, guys. Notice point C there. God exists. And he is greater than any Pharaoh on earth. That's what he believed in his mind. Okay? So it doesn't matter who we stand against. Okay? As long as we are standing for truth, doesn't matter who you're just a little man, Pharaoh, right? Oh yeah, you think you got a lot of power, but you're just a little man when it comes to who? When it comes to my God, right? And as long as I'm standing faithfully behind my God, doesn't matter who I'm standing before. Even if it is a world power, doesn't matter. Notice the lessons. What kind of faith do you possess? That's what we need to be asking ourselves. That's what this whole chapter is about, right? Folks, it's not really about the stories. We know the stories. It's really about the application of the stories to our life, is it not? Do you forsake that which is evil? Do you have courage to stand? Does your faith enable you to endure over long periods of time? Does your faith stay focused upon the invisible God? That's the question. We let so many little things get us discouraged, get us down, and we just want to what? Throw our hands up and quit. Guess what would we have done if we had to face what Moses had to face? Moses would have just turned around and gone home had he been some of us today. You know that? He'd have never endured. And look what we would have lost, wouldn't we? Unbelievable. Notice this. Moses grew up in the courts of Egypt where idolatry was rampant. Yet he believed in the invisible God. Again, his Israelite mother who nursed him instilled in him a deep faith in God. Now think about that, guys. Two things that we found that his mother put in him, right? Number one, she taught him God exists, and that was confirmed in the burning bush. Number two, she taught him who he is. Boy, if parents could do those two things for their kids, God exists, and this is who you are. You're a child of God. Wow. The world could be changed, could it not? And Moses, fortunately, took those lessons to heart. Questions, comments on old Moses? He forsook Egypt, not fearing the wrath of the king. Wow.
Yeah, I think if Moses had, if there was any doubt in his faith whatsoever, about somewhere around the 8th or 9th or 10th plague, I think it would have
You know, with every, well, you know, did he go to God with anything powerful in his hand? Yeah. Folks, he had 3 miracles that he could work just like that, could he not? And he did, didn't he? He had a staff, he could throw it on the ground, it would become a snake. He could put his hand into his bosom, pull it out, and it would be leprous. Put it back in, bring it out, just as clean as it could be. And he could pour water upon the ground, and it would turn to what? Turn to blood. You see, he went with great faith, but like you said, by the time this whole process had finished, can you imagine when he leaves Egypt and the faith that he must have had on that particular occasion? Wow. Unreal. Now notice this next one. Faith received the Passover. Now listen to what it says. Through faith, he, that's Moses, kept the Passover and the sprinkling of blood. Did you hear that? Through faith, he kept the Passover and the what? Sprinkling of blood. What am I trying to do? I'm trying to separate those two things, okay? Although they're connected with one another, they are also two totally different actions, okay? And we need to understand that. The sprinkling of the blood was the Passover lamb's blood, but the Passover meal was one thing. The sprinkling of the blood was what? Another thing. And guess what he did? He did both, didn't he? Now watch that last part. Lest he that destroyed the firstborn should touch them. 3 points he makes. Number one, the obedience of faith. Through faith he what? Kept. Okay? Guys, almost every time you read about faith in this chapter, it is what? Doing something, isn't it? It's obeying God. Almost every statement is here's faith, but faith is what? Acting. And that's what faith is all about. We should never have a dead faith. It always needs to be acting. Notice point 1 there under the lessons. We must always keep in mind the fact that we do not have faith in God if we fail to obey His commands. Just mental assent is not what? Enough. Folks, it's not enough to say, oh, I believe in God. Are there a lot of people who say that? Yeah. There's a lot of people who say that, and they've never darkened the doors of a church building. You don't believe in God. Now, they'd fall on the floor if you told them that, but it's true. You don't believe in God. Guys, if we don't obey God, then guess what? We don't believe in God. It's just that simple. If you won't obey God, then you really don't have faith in God, because faith always what? Faith always obeys. Now notice this next one. We must obey God even when we do not see the connection between the command and the blessing. God would have known. I think I got that wrong. I can't even hardly read that. God would have... I'm going to have to go back and reword that, okay? The question at the end is the right question, okay? I'll reword that statement when I redo my notes. Why did they have to put blood on the doorpost? That's the question, right? You see, God knew why the Israelites knew why they had to do the Passover meal, right? We got to offer sacrifice. We got unleavened bread because we got to get out of here quickly. We don't change our clothes. We stay dressed, you see. And that commemorates the exit from the land of Egypt. But now why take blood and put it on the doorpost and on the lintels? What's that all about? Okay, but why? Let me ask you, did God know who was in the house already? Did God know if they had celebrated the Passover? Yes. So why the blood? See? It's a command that doesn't make any sense. God knew who was in the house. God knew if the Passover had been sacrificed. The angel of death that was sent, he would have known, wouldn't he? But you see, all it is a simple act of faith on man's part. Something that doesn't make sense, something that we may not understand, something we may not agree with, and yet, guess what? It's simple, it's easy, just what? Just do it, okay? But it can be very, very difficult. Exodus 12:28 says this, and the children of Israel went away and did as the Lord had commanded Moses and Aaron, so did they. Wow. How many people are we talking about? Anybody know? How many people are we talking about? At least. Some have said it could be possibly up to 3 million people. Okay? It's a huge number of folks, isn't it? And guess what? All of them had to what? All of them had to do it. So here's Moses talking to all the children of Israel, right? I need you to kill the Passover. I need you to put this blood on the doorpost and lintels. And guess what the Bible says? And they all did it. Oh, what a church. What a church. Wouldn't that be wonderful? You stand before the church, you preach your lesson, you tell them what God wants them to do, and they all do it. Oh, what a church. Man, I'm looking for that church. You know that? Notice why they did it. Here's the outcome of disobedience. Lest he that destroyed the firstborn should touch them. And it came to pass that at midnight the Lord smote all the firstborn in the land of Egypt. From the firstborn of Pharaoh that sat on his throne, and of the firstborn of the captive that was in the dungeon, and all the firstborn of cattle. And if one Israelite had failed to mark their door, guess what? Death. would have wreaked havoc in that home. What do people do when family members die? They weep and they cry and they grieve and they sob. Can you imagine being in the land of Egypt that night? Those they didn't have windows like we have windows. Okay? Can you imagine the sobbing and the crying and the mourning? And guess what? Those people back there were very, very outward in how they expressed their grief too. Loud sobs and loud moans for their children, for their firstborn. And for what? Even their cattle. Okay? Notice point C, it is difficult to understand the lesson. There are severe consequences of what? Disobedience to God. Guys, we need to get that, okay? You know, we live in a society today that wants all the positives, don't they? And if you give all the positives, well then everybody's happy and they're just tickled to death. And if you talk about the negatives, people think you're a downer, think that you're just this person who can't preach anything positive. But folks, the reality is that disobedience is not looked upon highly by God, is it? If your doorpost had not been marked the way God wanted it to, your firstborn would have died. Now, I've got a firstborn. You know that? It'd kill me. I've got some firstborn grandsons and daughters. Don't you? That would tear me up. You see, the consequences of disobedience are severe. What does the Bible say? It is a fearful thing to what? Fall into the hands of the living God. Okay, guys, we don't want to do that. Okay, not in a disobedient state, not in a state of unbelief. Okay, and fortunately, as far as we know, not one Israelite disobeyed God. You know that? That's pretty good, isn't it? I still am impressed by that. Notice point E there. Faith released who? The Israelites. By faith, they passed through the Red Sea as by dry land, which the Egyptians, essaying to do, were drowned. Again, we see the element of what? Faith. By faith. Wow. Notice it was an obedient faith. By faith, they what? Passed through. I still sit here and try to picture that event. You know, one of the best things that was ever created was that Charlton Heston movie. You know, at least you get some experience of what it was like. I don't know if it's exactly like that, but you get a little bit of the experience, right? Guys, I want you to think about that night, that day, okay? Who is pressing, trying to get to the Israelites? Pharaoh's army. They've caught up with them, have they not? What is keeping this army from getting to you? Yes, a pillar of fire, right? On one side it is a cloud, on the other side it is fire, is it not? Okay? So you turn around this way and you see Pharaoh's army and this huge pillar of fire keeping the enemy away. When you turn around and look the other way, what do you see? A sea. Now, if you don't know what that looks like, when you get through tonight, go down to the ocean and just stand there. And just look out there. Because, guys, that's what the Red Sea looked like. It's huge. Okay? You could not see to the other side. It's huge. Right? Now listen to this. And the Lord said unto Moses, Wherefore comest thou unto me? Speak unto the children of Israel, that they go forward. Uh-oh. It's time to do what? It's time to cross that sea. Now, how did the Lord divide the sea? With a what? with a wind. Now, let me tell you something. Go blow on the water. You just go down to the ocean and blow on that water just a little bit. Now, you are not going to part the sea with your breath. It is going to take a powerful, mighty wind passing through there in order to divide that sea, folks. I'm talking about a mighty wind. Just the wind itself would almost scare you to death. What did the wind cause the sea to do? Caused the sea to part, did it not? Okay? The sea stood up on either side. And what happened to the land? It's just as dry as a bone. Unreal. Nope. Don't have a clue. Okay? Wide enough. Oh yeah, it would have been huge. Oh, it would have been huge, you know. But now I want you to sit there, and here you are, you're standing there. You see water on either side. When you look up, what's over the top of it? A big dark cloud, okay? Water on the top, water on either side. And what does God say? I need you to go through that, right? Now the question is, who's going first? You know, Moses is standing up on the ledge with his staff in his hand, right? So he's not going first. Somebody had to go first. When you get in the middle of that thing, what do you start thinking? Man, is this really true? Is this really this water could come down any time, right? Guys, it took faith to pass through there. It wasn't, we're talking about what? Men, women, and children. We're talking about all the animals. We're talking about every one of the trailers that they would be pulling to get through there. We're talking 1 to 3 million people crossing through. Huh? There's always one in every bunch. No, it's not. Mike would have been poking it. He'd probably been running his finger through it on his Harley. I could just see him now. Notice what the text says. They escaped through the sea, folks. They passed through the Red Sea as by dry land. And the children of Israel went into the midst of the sea upon dry land, and the waters were a wall unto them on the right hand and their left. Exodus 14, verse 22. Man. Guys, this is called a baptism by the Apostle Paul. Did you know that? 1 Corinthians chapter 10, verses 1 and 2. Moreover, brethren, I would not that you should be ignorant, how that all of our fathers were under the cloud, and all passed through the sea, and were all baptized unto Moses in the cloud and in the sea. We're all what? Baptized unto Moses in the cloud and in the sea. What is baptism? It's an immersion. Another term, overwhelming, a whelming, okay? You see, there was water what? On either side and over the top of them. They passed through those waters. And Paul says that was the baptism of Moses. We're all baptized unto Moses in the cloud and in the sea. When were they free from bondage? On the other side. Folks, freedom comes after baptism, not before. Now, you can take that right there and teach that to your denominational friends, and there is no argument against it. Okay? There's no argument against it. Baptism saves. Save these people, and it is a picture of New Testament baptism. You can't be saved until after you're baptized. Nobody's ever been saved prior to baptism. Nobody. I don't care what the Baptists say, or the Calvinists say, or whomever says. This is a perfect picture of it, isn't it? Beautiful picture of it. Now watch this. The enemy drowned, which the Egyptians, assaying to do, were what? Drowned. Assaying. The little word assaying simply means this, trying to do. Guess what they were trying to do? Yeah, just get across on the other side too. Now I want you to look at that first statement that I wrote there. Okay? The Egyptians were both bold and foolish to follow Israel into a tunnel of water. Weren't they? Can you imagine? You know? And here they were, chomping at the bit to get to who? Get to the Israelites, right? Finally, that pillar of fire goes away, and guess what? Charge! They don't even think about what's going on. They just rush into what? Rush into the tunnel of water. That still blows my mind. You know? Here's my question. Didn't they understand a miracle was happening? Oh, come on now. They'd just been held off from Israel by a pillar of fire. Don't tell me they don't know this is a miracle. Had they ever seen the waters of the Red Sea standing on end before like this? No. They had to know this is a miracle. But guess what, guys? Zeal sometimes clouds knowledge. You know that? And that happens in a lot of places, doesn't it? We are so zealous for something. And that's where the armies of Israel were. We're so zealous. We got to catch them. We got to bring them back. We got to get them back to Pharaoh. We can't let these slaves go. They were so zealous that it clouded even their knowledge of what was going on at that particular time. And they rushed in to that tunnel. Wow. Guess what happened? They drowned. I find it interesting that the Bible says, and it doesn't say it here, but the Bible says God was fighting for the Israelites. What happened when they got in that tunnel? Yes, see, the writer of Hebrews doesn't even mention that. They get right in the middle of that tunnel of water, and guess what happens? They start looking down, and all their chariot wheels are following off. And guess what they were trying to do? They were trying to keep the chariots going. Can you imagine them poor old horses? God stopped them right in the middle of the water, didn't He? And then what did He tell Moses to do? He's told him to stand again and command that those waters go back to their place. Now listen to what the text says, folks. And the waters returned and covered the chariots and the horsemen and all the host of Pharaoh that entered into the sea after them. There remained not so much as one of them. Every Egyptian soldier died in that water. Had the land of Egypt been totally devastated? Yeah, 10 plagues had totally devastated that land. Right? Totally devastated that land. The only thing Pharaoh had was what? Was his army. And now his army's gone. The totality of his army drowned in that water. How was it done? By faith, wasn't it? You see, God let the children of Israel know that the same water I saved you by could have destroyed you, because it destroyed who? It destroyed the Egyptians. Pretty powerful stuff. Now, yes, sir.
They say archaeologists have found chariot wheels.
You know, I keep hearing that, and I keep trying to look that up and find it on Google and wherever you go, and I just can't find where that's confirmed, okay? I keep hearing they say that, okay? I just wish I knew who the they were, okay? You would think they could dive down there, dig deep enough, and find it, couldn't you? Okay? The problem is, exactly where did they what? Where did they cross? Okay? There's two more examples that he gives, and neither of these examples really involve Moses, okay? They really involve another man by the name of Joshua, but I've included him under the section of Moses because Joshua was what? Moses' successor, okay? One of them has to do with Jericho. One of them has to do with Rahab the harlot. Rahab the what? The harlot. What was her nationality? What was Rahab's nationality? Nobody knows? That's your assignment for next week. Who said that? Oh, yes, she was a Canaanite. Isn't that something? A Canaanite's faith is mentioned. Right? Pretty interesting. And guess what? She's going to be in the bloodline of who? Of Jesus Christ. She's going to marry a prince by the name of, some say Salmon. People who are good in English call it salmon. Okay, S-A-L-M-O-N. Okay, we'll talk about them next week. Woo.
You think they went in there too because they feared the Pharaoh also? They come back without going in?
Oh yeah.